Hello Brit-Lit students, welcome to the third week of the spring 2017 semester. I've got two things I want to say before I start talking about class stuff. First of all, how about those Falcons, man? Super Bowl bound. Yes, they rose up in a big way against Green Bay yesterday, and hopefully we can take it to Tom Brady and the Patriots this coming, or 2 weeks from now. Whew, boy, it felt good to say that. Alright, now the second one's a little bit more serious. I sincerely hope, deep down in my heart, that you were not affected by the storms this past weekend. I've already received emails from two students. Now, neither one of them are in this class. They're in my on-campus classes. But I've already started receiving emails from students who were affected, and, obviously my heart goes out to them, and I will work with them in order to help them get through this time as far as, assignments and things like that. And the same goes for you. So if you have been affected in a negative way by these storms, and it's enough to cause you to, have more important things to worry about than this class, sincerely, right? Don't kid around. But I mean, if you sincerely have been affected by this storm, and and you need me to work with you, I will do it. So there are more important things sometimes in life than to do a discussion posting. So let me know, and you and I, we'll communicate, and we'll get through this. All right. Now, having said that, I want to let you know that only three of the students in this class actually did discussion postings this past weekend, or this past week. One of them submitted it early last week, but that's not good enough, folks. I know I just said if the storms affected you, I'd work with you. And I will. I meant that. But I find it hard to believe that the storms affected all but three people in this class. So, you need to get those discussion postings done. You need to stay on top of it, because what happens a lot of times is students will fall behind about 4 or 5 weeks, and then they never get caught up throughout the semester. Or if they do, they give me like little 3-sentence postings, or they find themselves stressed out because they're trying to do 5 weeks worth of work in 1 week. So, get those discussion postings done and stay caught up on them. It's very, very important so that you don't fall behind in this class. All right, now, let's talk about this week's readings. We have got the French Revolution, and we have got Edmund Burke, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Thomas Paine. Folks, you are going to see quite the argument. The French Revolution. Now, you also need to read that introduction to the French Revolution in your textbook, and you need to take a look at the French Revolution slideshow that I have got put on our D2L page in order to understand what's going on in France at the time. Essentially, what happened was the French people were being so oppressed by not only the royal family, which consisted of both King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, who really represented everything that was wrong with what was going on in France at the time, with the gap between the rich and the poor. I mean, we argue about that in the United States now, and it's definitely a problem. However, in France back in the 1790s, it was much, much worse. And it got to a point where the French people finally said enough is enough, and they overthrew and beheaded their king and queen, and they also beheaded a lot of members of the church, because back in the French Revolution times, in order to have money, you either had to be aristocracy, which was a member of the royal family, or you had to be clergy, which meant that you were working for the Catholic Church. That was it. Nobody else really had much money. So, as a result, the people of France had this major revolution, and it was a bloody revolution. It was devastating. Now, why do I bring this up in a British literature class? The reason is that a lot of people in England were watching these events very, very closely. They wanted to know what was going to happen when France overthrew its king, because people in England were under the rule of King George III at the time, who, he probably gets, less credit than he deserves, but King George III was not a good king. He wasn't a terrible king. He was actually better than many other kings. But he had already lost the American colonies. He was already going blind and deaf. He was already going insane. Essentially, by this time, George the Fourth is actually kind of sort of ruling the country, even though King George the Third is still the king. So, the people in England were looking very closely at this because, at the events going on in France, I should say, because they wanted to know, do we overthrow our king or not? And things got so out of control in France that the people in England said, you know what, we tried this already. Remember that slideshow, that history lesson I had you do in week 1? Well, this is why we did it, because now, if you've done that lesson and taken that quiz, that England had already beheaded and overthrown a king once, about 130 years or so sooner than this, or earlier than this. And then they restored their king. So, really, King George III and his descendants, right on through to the current royal family, benefited from having America already go through that. It also is going to help when you read Edmund Burke, because Edmund Burke's going to take the side of divine right of kings. He's going to take the side of, the events in France are horrifying. And it makes sense, because Edmund Burke was a rich man. He was a member of aristocracy. He had lots of land. So, of course, he did not want this system in England overthrown, because he had money. He had power. He did not want to lose that. And he had lots and lots of friends who agreed with him. So what you're going to see is you're going to see Edmund Burke speak out, and then you're going to see Wollstonecraft and Paine absolutely tear him a new one. But a lot of people have actually approved of Edmund Burke and his attitudes of, oh, well, we don't need to overthrow our royal family. We've got, everything's good here. And also, as part of your history lesson, you saw the Magna Carta, which gave people rights against King John, and the Declaration of Rights that came out of the Bloodless Revolution with William and Mary, which also gave certain freedoms. So if you don't remember what they are, go back and review those, because Burke is going to make the argument, we already have protections and we already have freedoms built in thanks to the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Right. On the other side of the debate is going to be Mary Wollstonecraft and Thomas Paine. And if you remember your American history, yes, it's that same Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was a highly, highly intelligent man. He was very outspoken. He was all about freedoms and rights of people. What he was not was popular. He was actually, by the time he's writing this stuff about the Revolution of France, he's pretty much been thrown out of the United States and told never to come back. He would get thrown out of England and told never to come back. In fact, he would actually end up dying in France, pretty much friendless. But they are going to counter Burke. Mary Wollstonecraft is going to counter Burke by saying, first of all, he's not very good at arguing. His logic is flawed. And because his logic is flawed, and because he's not, on her side, then therefore people must disagree with him. Thomas Paine is really going to go after him and say, hey, you know what, it's stupid to think that documents that were written hundreds of years ago still have enough sway over people today. In fact, he's going to make the statement that the idea that one can rule from the grave, beyond the grave, is ridiculous. And if Mary Wollstonecraft calls Burke a flawed human being, wait till you see what Thomas Paine calls him. You almost can't say it in a college classroom setting. Almost. He doesn't quite take it that far, but he doesn't get far from it. So, so you're looking at these two sides. The last thing that I should have mentioned first, really, is that these are done in pamphlets. With the invention of the printing press, and the fact that more people could now read and write, people were demanding good material to read. And pamphlets, these pamphlets, which were very short and very easy for the publishers to print out, so they could make a quick buck on them, or quick pennies on them back in those years, provided, they filled this need of stuff to read. And they were usually political in nature. And you can see that with Burke on one side and Wollstonecraft and Paine on the other. And so, these were kind of like today's internet. You know how you see people get onto political interviews on Facebook, or you see people watching cable television, and they either gravitate towards CNN or they gravitate towards Fox News, depending upon their political views. These pamphlets work the exact same way, folks. They're political in nature. So all this arguing that goes on Facebook and Twitter and Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and all that stuff, we've seen this before. We've seen this before. And this was in the pamphlets during the French Revolution. So I think you're going to enjoy this week's readings. Please don't fall behind on those postings. Get those week 1 postings done if you're one of the majority of the students that haven't done them yet. And get this week's posting done on time. Again, with the caveat that if you have been affected by the storms, that we can make accommodations. Okay? So have a great week, and I hope you enjoy the French Revolution readings.